I'm Harrison Wise, and today we are FOAFing around with Amy Kenigsberg. She's an external and internal communications expert and founder of K2 Global Communications, a tech and B2B communications agency. How are you doing today, Amy?
I'm doing great. How about you, Harrison?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. So I like to start these FOAFing around with podcasts with just a little intro on yourself. So tell us a little bit about yourself, some general background, and some of your experience.
Sure. So I'm an external and internal communications consultant. I've been doing that for about 20 years. Before that, I worked in marketing and journalism. I have a bachelor's of journalism degree from the University of Missouri-Columbia, the #1 journalism school in the United States, and master's in business from the University of Kansas. Go Tigers, not Jayhawks. Sorry about that, gang. I've been living in Israel. One of the things that allows me to do is to work with Australia in the morning, Silicon Valley at night, and all points in between. We focus on earned, shared, and owned media. Thank you, Gini Dietrich, for inventing the peso model. Earned is traditional public relations, thought leadership, content placement, features in magazines, interviews with analysts and journalists. Shared, we do objective social media and promotional social media, all organic. And then on the own side, we write blogs, white papers, website content, email marketing, any end-to-end client communications. On the internal comms side, I worked at a very small company called General Electric, where I was Six Sigma communications leader. I love their titles. And I also did internal communications at Amdocs. And just based on the work we've done over the years with many large and small companies, often we discover that the company is not on the same page. The sales team is making promises that engineering could never fulfill. So we always try to make sure when we're doing external communications that internal communications are also covered.
And all of that falls under the PR umbrella, huh, Amy? I think that's a big misperception out there that, PR is just this like one-trick pony. I think, and I'm sure there's a lot more that you haven't articulated that I know as well, because I'm also from the PR communication side of things that we do. And I don't think I think we need to do a better job of our own PR, and I assume you would agree.
Definitely.
How would you describe yourself as a fractional executive? Like what the FOAF are you is specifically the question. So, what kind of fractional CXO do you most identify as?
Okay, so mainly CMO or Chief Communications Officer. We're here to provide strategic direction. Again, one of the issues we've discovered working with many companies over the years is messaging is something that's often fly by night, and not everyone understands the goals, the objectives, the simple why are we here and what are we doing? And so often we'll come into a company and just do, on the fractional side, a quick marketing workshop on messaging, or help them put together a strategic plan for external communications or internal communications, or, do a comms audit and say, this is where you're doing well, this is where you need to improve, et cetera.
So how do you feel that the communications function fits in these type of organizations? Like how does it intersect or overlap or tie into marketing?
Generally at most companies, unless they're very large, there's no chief communications officer, and everything is by the seat of the pants from many different departments. So one of the things I like to do when I come in as a FOAF is to just try to get everybody coordinated, who's doing what. In a way, communications at a company is also kind of like shadow IT. Everybody's doing a little bit of everything, and not everybody knows what's going on. So I like to just kind of come in and shine a light on what's already happening, and then help the companies coordinate and fine tune to make sure it becomes a well-oiled machine versus just, little pellets flying here and there.
So in your opinion, I've seen some debate online about how communication should report into marketing, or as people on our side of the equation, think marketing and sales should ladder up into communications because of a lot of what you just shared. What's your perspective?
I definitely agree. I think sales, marketing, internal communications, public relations, it's all communications. And you need one person to make sure that everybody is speaking with the same language.
You think that it's possible, or is that something that has to happen from like an early stage startup and it has the organization has to be built that way? Or is that something that you think a company could evolve into if they currently have a structure where they ladder up typically to marketing, which is the common structure in most organizations?
I honestly, I think marketing is already doing that a lot of the time, except usually the problem is they have no control over the sales function. So really, I think the philosophy of account-based marketing is starting to push organizations to have sales and marketing work more closely together. And then it's just a matter of adding internal communications in the mix, which is often under the HR function. So it's almost like when I was at General Electric, what you had kind of a dual reporting system where I was in the Six Sigma quality group. So I reported both to the Six Sigma officer, but then I also reported to the chief communications officer. So it does occur. It's just a matter of, the titles and the functions and drawing the lines in the organizational structure. I think anybody can do it.
Areas of expertise. What kinds of projects are you looking to be involved in?
I really like messaging, because that's really the essence of the organization. What's in it for me, for the employees? What's in it for me, for the customers? What's in it for me, for the investors? What's in it for me, for the community? All the different stakeholders have different needs, different desires, and different results. One of the things we talk about with our clients is, for example, they're a cybersecurity company. They're selling to the CISO, they're selling to the project manager, they're selling to purchasing, they're selling to the person who's actually using the system. It's the exact same product, but every stakeholder is going to get something completely different out of it. And that's why we really like to focus on messaging, because it really does create the whole.
So what do you think the biggest misconception people have about sort of fractional executives?
I think people don't understand that we're not there to come out from on high. Whatever we say is, gospel. It's that we're there to help. We're there to support what they're doing already. We're not there to come in, do a project, and leave. We're there to help them create the infrastructure. So when we're not there, they can continue on the path and actually achieve what their original goals were.
And do you think that's a byproduct of people sort of conflating fractional with freelance?
I think that's part of it. And I also think it's the historical tradition of consulting. Is so many of the large consulting companies, they come in, they redo everything, and they leave. And they don't build champions within the organization. And I think as a FOAF, you leave the door open to more of a consultative relationship of, this is the plan, this is what we agreed on. And now you've got two department heads who've decided they want nothing to do with this. Then we offer some quick advice versus, one of those big giant, now it's called digitalization, then it was reorganization, there's, as my husband likes to say, old wine in new bottles. And so as a FOAF, what we like to do is come in and say, we're still adjacent to your company, pick up the phone, we're here if you need us, and you're not going to pay the $6 to $10 million as a giant consulting company when they come in and redo your organization.
From your point of view, what does a successful fractional hire look like, and how does a CEO or founder sort of measure that success?
So that's actually quite funny, because the communications aspect, they've been talking about measuring communications for more than 100 years. Public relations, for example, there used to be something called the advertising equivalent, where one page of a magazine was $5,200 and you got an article that covered a page. So that was the equivalent of $5,200. Measurement is always difficult on a communications role. The only way to really measure how well the communications are going is, really clearly define the goal and the objectives. We're going to streamline your sales enablement materials. So we expect to see percentage growth in sales. But then if these salespeople don't know how to close, then that's not going to help. I've talked to other consultants who come in and we've all been fired because we've done a great job and someone internally has dropped the ball. So the issue with measuring results is there are so many variables, unless you say, okay, we expect a 5% increase in website hits with this activity. But other than that, unless you're on the CFO side and you can say, we're going to invest in bonds that'll grow at 3% for the next 2 years. And you say, see, they grew at 3%. Communications measurement is next to impossible.
Yeah, and attribution, I think, is a factor there as well. I think, like you said, sales enablement, but I'm sure all of the salespeople who are involved will take the credit and not necessarily, connect the dots that comms influenced that sale. The prospect that they were talking to, read an article, downloaded a white paper, or had some touch point or interaction or awareness that was generated by comms. And that, it's hard to measure, but and that getting that attribution is often difficult, especially as an external, fractional or outside agency.
Exactly.
It's a big issue. It's a big issue, and that's where I think PR does need to do a better job of its own PR. And to your earlier point, just rattling off a fraction of the actual things that we as communications pros do. I think it's, I think we do ourselves a disservice often, in these types of engagements and relationships. What do you find challenging about the fractional approach?
The issue with the fractional approach is getting the buy-in of all the stakeholders, because some people feel threatened by the fact that, oh, you've brought somebody in to help me. I don't need help. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm doing just fine. I don't need help. And so what we try to explain is we provide the outside perspective. We basically say the emperor is naked. And not many people want to hear it. I would much rather go into a meeting and leave having told people the truth, and them firing me as a fraction of a fraction, than going in there and saying, oh, well, you're right. And then letting the company continue. The enemy of change is, well, that's the way we've always done it.
Right. If nothing changes, nothing changes. That's, I tell that to a lot of clients as well. And, they bring you on to create this new avenue or new pathway. And yet they always want to sort of, default to how they've done things or what have you. And you can't expect to have this sea change shift if you don't change anything.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons is when I go into a company, I don't want to just talk to the C-suite. I want to talk to the customer service people who are answering the phone. I want to talk to the marketing coordinator who's handling the trade show management. I want to talk to the engineers, because often the engineering team is ignored, just go take care of this, go build this product. And they're having ideas on, how would I use this platform? What's interesting to me? Mm-hmm. And there are so many people who are just ignored at the, with companies used to have secretaries. Now they have administrative assistants. Those are the people who actually run the organization from day to day. So anyone who's walking into the C-suite without actually having talked to the line workers, it's going to be a waste of time and money.
Do you often get pushback in that? In my experience, we've gotten pushback, or, stay in your lane. We brought you on to do this, just do that. There's no reason to talk to all of those stakeholders or people within the organization. Do you what do you say to those experiences, or are those just red flags and you kind of walk away from those?
A little of both. If there's a champion for you, you have to kind of see how much they're willing to fight. But you have, it's a matter of explaining. You're the CEO. You have this great vision. Do you talk to customers on the phone 24/7? Are you the one answering the helpline? What are your customers saying to you? You're talking to the C-suite to C-suite. You're not talking to the people who are actually using your product all the time. Maybe it's a good idea to listen to people. And sometimes they hear you, and sometimes they say, thank you very much, here's the door.
What do you say to those, opportunities that, they hire someone like you or me, and they just assume that the coverage is going to start coming because they've hired you and you have relationships, and, how do you handle those type of unrealistic expectations from, client prospects or clients that, again, they think they just hire a PR firm and that there's going to be a deluge of coverage, within the first, 60, 90 days?
Well, it's very funny, to use another cliche. They believe if you build it, they will come. So first you've got to teach them the value of PR. Then once you've convinced them of the value, then you have to explain it's long-term. You don't just do PR and leave. You're wasting your time.
Don't turn it on and off.
Exactly. It's a long-term investment, because people need to understand that you're still there, that you're not a fly-by-night company. Like, you don't just do one press release, maybe 6 or 8 months later. It's building long-term relationships with the people who are important in your industry. One of the things we always explain to them is, you need to talk to the analysts, you need to talk to the journalists. One of the issues we have that's kind of funny here in Israel is they say, oh, well, we want someone based in the United States. And we say, that's great, but they're working from home also. There are no more offices. There are no more journalists who are working in big, giant magazine companies. Everybody is working from home. It doesn't matter where anybody is nowadays. Mm-hmm. And so, just the geography thing, that's, again, being in Israel, I can work with an Australian publication. I can work with a Silicon Valley publication. So what we try to do is say, it does take time. You will get there. Let's see where we are in a year. It's not going to happen immediately, unless you've cured cancer. Okay, if you've cured cancer, yes, we can guarantee a lot of coverage in the first month.
Right.
Beyond that,
right,
you got to invest. Right. You're not going to buy a 1 share of stock when you're 22 and be a millionaire by 50.
So how do you articulate the value of PR when you had said, like, that's one of the first steps, in sort of mitigating, those misperceptions about PR? What are your sort of, key points for showcasing the value of PR?
One of the things we really focus on is third-party endorsement. I can say they're great. You can say they're great. But unless someone who's respected in the industry says they're great, they don't have the credibility. In addition, because PR is a long-term investment, people aren't always going to have that problem that second. But they're going to remember that they read about you, that you showed some expertise. One of the areas we try to really focus on with our client, because so many places are just deluged with, blah, blah, is we always tell them that they're sitting on valuable data. So many software as a service companies can create fantastic reports about what's happening in their industry, what's important to their clients, and that's automatically news. And so it's a matter of explaining to them what news is and what value it brings for them to be part of the industry's news cycle.
How do you like respond to those, executives who are more focused on performance driven advertising or marketing, right? Because, they put in $10, they know they're going to get $100 back, right? There's a very clear sort of ROI. Whereas, as we articulated throughout this conversation, PR is in some cases improvisational, but also hard to attribute and hard to measure, and is also long-term versus short-term. How do you juxtapose those priorities? Because I do, in my own experience, I see the pendulum swinging towards like performance advertising or just like immediate ROI, $1 in, $2 out, like very clear sort of, ROI KPIs.
So what we try to do is we say, okay, here's what you're going to do. First of all, check your web traffic when PR, public relations things hit. See where the links are coming from and make it simple. Ask when someone registers further into your site versus just, getting their email. Where did you first hear of us? I read about you in an article. I saw a social media post. If you ask, when someone calls customer service, thanks for your patronage. How did you first hear about our company? That's the only way to really find out is to ask the clients and ask the prospects, where did that come from?
How has AI impacted, the comms function from your perspective?
It's actually very funny because when ChatGPT first came out, I made sure I knew about it. I hosted webinars about it. And at the beginning, everybody was terrified. Mm-hmm. And AI isn't such a great writer. So it's one of those when I have something to write, I decide, okay, is it going to be faster if I write it myself or if I have AI do it and edit it? Because 9 times out of 10, when I have AI write it, I spend more time editing it than I would have writing it in the first place. I think AI definitely has a place. Like, you've got a blog and, you ask one of the AI tools, please write a social media post to promote my blog. On the other hand, then you have to spend more time editing those as well. So for people who can't look at a blank page and need something there, AI is fantastic because it gives them a start. For those of us who are natural writers and we're working with AI can be very kludgy, repetitive, redundant. One of the examples I used when I was doing the AI seminars, I asked AI to write an email, like a 600-word blog. By the time I was done editing it, it was down to 150. So, AI is a good tool, but it's not going to replace any writers anytime soon. And when it does, I hope like heck I'm retired.
Yeah. So before we wrap things up, so we're coming up on sort of the 30-minute mark. What are you most excited or concerned about for the year ahead, professionally speaking?
So I think it's the focusing on AI. We actually had a client drop us because they said, oh, we'll just use ChatGPT to generate all our marketing materials. And so it's re-educating the C-suite and say, no, yes, it's a money saver, but it's not going to be the holy grail. I think explaining that AI is a tool, not a solution, is something that we're all going to be fighting with over the next year. In addition, the global economy is so interlaced. The volume of conflicts going around the world right now, but business is still getting done. Israel is definitely experiencing some challenging times. I remember last year I was on the phone with someone in the Ukraine and I was asking them, how do you keep going on working? And he's like, you got to do what you got to do. And that's the same thing. But, I think people in non-conflict zones need to understand that there are still people working. There are still people who can produce and deliver. And life is going on. So, just remember that those of us in Israel and the Ukraine and every other place that's not at peace, it's, normal people are still going to work every day. Kids are going to school. So I definitely think that's something people need to remember, is that business is still continuing.
So before we wrap things up, any last minute thoughts or parting thoughts you wanna leave with?
AI is a tool, not a solution. Human creativity cannot be replaced. And communicate. Remember that the people who aren't in the C-suite are often more important to the organization than the people with the C in their title.
Amy, it's been a pleasure FOAFing around with you today. Thank you for joining us on the
Thank you
FOAF.
very much.
Thank you.